3 generals hit their knees on the concrete floor. 400 Delta Force operators stopped breathing. In 43 years of special operations history, no one had ever seen a general kneel, not for presidents, not for Medal of Honor recipients, not for anyone. But there they were. 3 stars, 2 stars, 4 stars retired, all kneeling before a 27-year-old woman who weighed 115 pounds and stood 5'2". She was holding a spent bullet casing. The same bullet that had just shattered the world record for longest combat kill in military history. The same bullet that killed the man who murdered her father. 47 men had tried to destroy her. They spat in her food. They left dead rats in her bed. They abandoned her alone in the wilderness at midnight. They called her princess. They called her diversity quota. They bet she'd break in 72 hours. She made them kneel instead. This is the story of Captain Sarah Chen. Subscribe now. Watch until the end. Comment your city below. I want to see how far this story travels. The black Humvee stopped at the CAG compound gates at 0547 hours. Sarah Chen grabbed her rucksack and stepped out into the October morning. The North Carolina air was thick with humidity and the smell of pine. 47 male operators stood in formation on the PT field, their morning workout frozen mid-rep. They were staring at her. Sarah had expected this. She'd prepared for it. But preparation and reality were 2 different animals, and right now reality felt like walking into a cage full of wolves wearing nothing but a steak suit. She was 27 years old, 5'2", 115 pounds after a big breakfast. Her jet black hair was pulled tight in a regulation bun. Her eyes, dark brown, almost black, had a quality that made people uncomfortable. Not cold exactly, just seeing. Like she was cataloging everything and everyone for future reference. On her right shoulder, Ranger tab. On her left, Expert Infantryman badge. Both earned the hard way through blood and vomit and the kind of suffering that most people couldn't imagine. And on her rifle case, scratched into the polymer in letters so faint you had to squint to see them, Chen. Master Sergeant Victor Kowalski watched her approach. They called him Grizzly, not because of his name, but because of what he did to candidates who didn't measure up. 6'4", 240 pounds of muscle wrapped in camouflage and bad attitude. 32 years of service, including tours in every sandbox the American military had played in since Desert Storm. He'd broken better soldiers than her. Bigger soldiers. Stronger soldiers. Rangers and SEALs and Green Berets who'd bled in Fallujah and Kandahar and come home with medals to prove they'd earned the right to try out for Delta. And now they were sending him a girl. Well, 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 Grizzly's voice carried across the field. Looks like someone got lost on the way to the mall. Sarah stopped 3 paces away, came to attention. Eyes locked on the middle distance. Lieutenant Sarah Chen reporting as ordered, Master Sergeant. I know who you are. Grizzly circled her slowly. What I don't know is who the hell thought it was a good idea to waste my time with you. Silence from the formation. The morning had gone perfectly still. Let me tell you what I see, Lieutenant. Grizzly stopped in front of her. I see 5'0" of affirmative action. I see a political statement with a ponytail. I see some brass somewhere thinking they can make history by sending me someone who's going to wash out before breakfast and make my job harder while she does it. Sarah's expression didn't change. Do you know what the washout rate is for COAG selection, Lieutenant? Approximately 90%, Master Sergeant. That's for men. Grizzly leaned closer. Real operators. The best of the best show up here, and 9 out of 10 go home broken. What do you think your odds are? I'll let my performance speak for itself, Master Sergeant. Something flickered across Grizzly's face. Not quite a smile. More like a wolf spotting a rabbit and deciding to play with its food before eating it. Your performance. Right. He turned to the formation. Thompson front and center. Staff Sergeant Derek Thompson jogged forward. 6'1", 210 pounds, former Marine Corps linebacker who'd traded football for force recon and never looked back. His hands were scarred from rope, burns his neck thick enough that his collar looked painted on. Thompson here is going to be your battle buddy for PT this morning, Grizzly announced. He's going to help you complete the standard Delta fitness assessment. Sound good? Yes, Master Sergeant. Outstanding. Grizzly checked his watch. Assessment starts in 5 minutes. Better stretch out, Lieutenant. Wouldn't want you to pull anything important. The operators laughed. Not loud, just enough to make the point. Sarah dropped her gear and began her stretching routine. Her movements were economical, practiced. She'd done this 10,000 times before. In her peripheral vision, she watched Thompson do the same, but his stretches were aggressive, almost violent. He wasn't limbering up for a fitness test. He was limbering up for a fight. 5 minutes later, they stood at the starting line. The obstacle course stretched across 2 miles of North Carolina terrain. 20 stations of pure, suffering rope, climbs and wall scales, and tire flips and mud pits, and everything the Army had ever designed to break the human body down to its most fundamental question. How much do you want this? On my mark, Grizzly called out. Ready, go! Thompson exploded forward like he'd been shot from a cannon. Sarah followed her shorter legs, working double time to match his pace. The first station was a 100-meter sprint to a cargo net 15 feet high. Thompson hit it at full speed, scaling it like a spider on amphetamines. Sarah was 3 seconds behind her fingers, finding the gaps in the net, her body moving with practiced efficiency. Up and over. Hit the ground. Sprint to the next station. Tire flips. 8 tractor tires, each weighing 300 pounds, had to be flipped end over end for 30 meters. Thompson's superior size gave him an advantage here. His powerful legs drove each flip with mechanical precision. But Sarah had learned something a long time ago: technique beats strength when strength gets tired. She positioned herself at a 45-degree angle, using her legs and hips more than her arms, letting physics do the work that muscle mass couldn't. By the 4th tire, Thompson's flips were getting slower. By the 6th, they were taking the same amount of time. The rope climb came at Station 7. 40 feet of hemp rope hanging from a steel frame. No leg assistance allowed. Pure upper body strength. Thompson went first. Hand over hand, his arms pistoning like machine parts. 23 seconds to the top. Sarah jumped, grabbed the rope, and started climbing. Her arms burned, her shoulders screamed. But her grandfather's voice was in her head, the same voice that had been there since she was 6 years old, the first time he'd handed her a rope, and told her to climb or quit. The body gives up long before the mind does, Sarah. Pain is just information. Are you injured, or are you uncomfortable? Learn the difference. She reached the top in 28 seconds. 5 seconds slower, but she'd made it. Halfway through the course at the log carry station, Thompson made his move. The logs were telephone poles, heavy and unwieldy. Each candidate had to carry one 150 meters, plant it, and return for the next. As Thompson finished his first carry, he swung the log down hard right, where Sarah was about to step. She had to jump back to avoid having her foot crushed. Lost 2 seconds. Sorry, Thompson called back, already jogging for his second log. Slippery? Sarah said nothing. Picked up her log. Carried it. Planted it. Returned. On her second carry, as she approached the planting zone, Thompson was there with his third log. He stumbled, or appeared to, and the heavy timber swung directly into her path. Sarah dropped. Let the log pass overhead. Felt the wind of its passage ruffle her hair. Came back up. Finished her carry. Still said nothing. The pattern continued through stations 12, 15, and 18. Small sabotages. A foot that caught her ankle during the low crawl. A sandbag that mysteriously burst open as she lifted it, coating her face in grit that got in her eyes. Thompson was careful. Nothing obvious. Nothing that looked intentional. But it was, and Sarah knew it, and she kept moving. The final station was a 60-pound rucksack carry, full combat load. 3 miles at pace. Thompson shouldered his ruck and took off like he had fresh legs. Sarah slung hers on, adjusted the straps, and followed. 1 mile in her left shoulder strap broke. The rucksack, suddenly unbalanced, tried to slide off her back. She caught it, redistributed the weight, kept moving. But now she had to hold the ruck in place with one hand while she walked her other arm swinging for balance. Thompson had cut the strap. She was sure of it. Somewhere between stations, when she'd set her gear down for half a second, he'd found a moment. A knife. Made the cut 2/3 of the way through so it would fail under stress. Her grandfather's voice again. When they cheat, you have 2 choices. Quit and prove them right, or finish and prove them wrong. She finished. 2 hours and 47 minutes after she started, Sarah crossed the final marker and dropped her rucksack. Her uniform was soaked with sweat and covered in mud. Her hands were torn up from the rope climbs. Blood seeped through her right pant leg where she'd scraped her knee on the wall climb. Thompson had finished 12 minutes earlier. He stood with the other operators, drinking water, laughing about something. Grizzly walked over to where Sarah stood, hands on her knees, trying to remember how to breathe. 2 hours 47, he announced. That's not bad, for someone your size. Thompson finished in 2:35. But hey, you completed the course. That's more than I expected. He gestured to her broken rucksack strap. Equipment failure happens. Better check your gear more carefully next time, Lieutenant. Sarah straightened up, looked Grizzly directly in the eyes for the first time. Yes, Master Sergeant. And something passed between them in that moment. An understanding. He knew she knew. She knew he knew she knew. And none of it mattered because this was how the game was played. Welcome to Delta Selection, Grizzly said. It only gets harder from here. The barracks were worse. They gave her a private room, not out of courtesy, but out of necessity. The only female candidate meant she couldn't bunk with the men, so they'd converted a supply closet into living quarters. 8 by 10 feet. A cot, a footlocker, a single bulb hanging from the ceiling. Sarah didn't mind the room. She minded what she found in it. The first night she opened her footlocker to find a dead rat on top of her spare uniforms. Someone had left it there during the afternoon while everyone was at training. The rat had been dead a while, long enough to smell. Sarah removed it with a trash bag. Washed her uniforms twice. Said nothing. The second night, her combat boots had been filled with shaving cream. She cleaned them out, said nothing. The third night, someone had taken every piece of equipment from her wall locker, her spare magazines, her cleaning kit, her personal items, and scattered them across the compound. She found a magazine in the latrine, her cleaning rod in the mess hall, her grandfather's photograph, the one she kept in her footlocker, the only picture of him in his Medal of Honor face down in a mud puddle. She recovered what she could, cleaned the photograph carefully, placed it back in her locker. Said nothing. The operators watched her like scientists watch a specimen, waiting to see when she'd break, when she'd complain, When she'd go running to someone in command and cry that the mean boys weren't being nice to her, she never did. In the mess hall, they made a game of it. When she sat down with her food tray, the entire table would stand up and move to a different location. Every single time. Breakfast, lunch, dinner. For 2 weeks straight. Sarah ate alone, read her field manuals while she chewed, studied tactics, learned radio protocols, absorbed everything she could about the unit she was trying to join. Said nothing. Captain Marcus Reeves noticed. He was the team leader, 34 years old, former Ranger Battalion commander, handsome in that sharp-edged way that came from too many close calls and not enough sleep. His file said he'd earned a Silver Star in Helmand Province for something classified that left 4 insurgents dead and his entire team alive. He watched Sarah eat alone for the 5th day in a row, and he felt something he hadn't expected to feel. Respect. Not because she was tough, plenty of people were tough, but because she understood something most candidates didn't. Delta selection wasn't about proving you were the strongest or the fastest or the most aggressive. It was about proving you could think when everything around you was designed to make you stop thinking. The hazing was a test. The equipment failures were a test. The social isolation was a test. And she was passing every single one. Day 14. The shooting range. Sergeant First Class Michael Driscoll ran the marksmanship program. 39 years old. Former Marine Scout sniper. 3 tours in Iraq, 2 in Afghanistan. A confirmed kill count he'd stopped tracking after it hit triple digits. He had the weathered look of a man who'd spent half his life looking through rifle scopes at people who needed to die. "Morrison," he called out. "You're up." Sarah approached the firing line. They'd issued her a standard M4A1 carbine with an EO-Tech holographic sight. 30-round magazine. 5.56 NATO rounds. The same rifle every operator on the compound carried. 3 shots at each distance, Driscoll explained. "You'll engage on my command. Target is center mass. Any questions?" "No, Sergeant." "Then get into position." Sarah went prone behind the rifle. Adjusted the buttstock. Found her natural point of aim. Controlled her breathing. The fundamentals. Her grandfather had drilled them into her 10,000 times. 300 meters. On your count. She settled the reticle on the silhouette downrange. Exhaled half her breath. Applied steady pressure to the trigger. The rifle cracked. Paper tore. 3 shots. 3 seconds apart. All within a 4-inch circle at 300 meters. 400. Same process. Slight adjustment for bullet drop. 3 more shots. 3 more holes in the target, slightly lower to account for distance. 500. This was where most soldiers started to struggle. 500 meters was right at the edge of effective range for the M4. Wind mattered here. Gravity mattered. The limitations of the platform started to show. Sarah took an extra moment. Read the wind flags downrange. A slight breeze from right to left, maybe 4 miles per hour. She'd need to hold just barely left of center to compensate. 3 shots. 3 impacts. All in an 8-inch group. The range went quiet. Driscoll walked downrange with his spotting scope. Examined each target. Came back with an expression Sarah couldn't quite read. "Decent groupings," he finally said. "For static targets. Any monkey can hit paper when nothing's shooting back." He gestured to the other operators watching from the bleachers. "But you know what? Let's see how the princess handles a little pressure. Thompson, Driscoll, Patterson. You're up. We're running a stress shoot. 3 operators jogged to the firing line, each taking a station beside Sarah. All of them qualified expert marksmen. All of them had killed enemy combatants in actual combat. New drill, Driscoll announced. 600 meters, moving targets, shoot no shoot scenario. 12 targets, total 6 hostiles, 6 civilians. You've got 30 seconds to engage all hostiles without hitting civilians. Miss a hostile, you fail. Hit a civilian, you fail. He looked directly at Sarah. This is what actual combat looks like, Lieutenant. You ready for actual combat? Yes, Sergeant. We'll see. Targets downrange. The automated target system activated. Silhouettes began moving across the range at varying speeds. Some were painted to look like armed combatants. Others were clearly civilians. They wove in and out of cover, appearing and disappearing at irregular intervals. Go. Thompson fired first, his rifle barking in rapid succession. Sarah tuned him out, focused on her own lane. Found her first hostile armed figure, left side moving right to left. Led the target slightly. Fired. The silhouette dropped. Target 2. Civilian. Hold fire. Target 3. Hostile. Adjust aim. Fire. Drop. Her world narrowed to the reticle and the targets. Everything else disappeared. The other shooters, the observers, the sound of her own breathing, all that existed was the sight picture and the trigger and the millisecond decisions between life and death. Hostile. Fire. Civilian. Hold. Hostile. Fire. The rifle became an extension of her arms. The targets became a problem set. Math and physics and muscle memory compressed into split-second calculations. When the timer buzzed at 30 seconds, Sarah had fired 11 times. She'd engaged 11 of the 12 targets. She'd been scanning for the last hostile when time expired. Thompson had fired 23 times. Martinez had fired 18. Patterson had fired 16. Driscoll called ceasefire and walked downrange with his spotting scope. When he came back, he was holding a clipboard with the scores. Thompson, 7 hostile targets engaged, 6 confirmed hits, 3 civilian targets hit. Fail. Thompson's jaw clenched, but he said nothing. Martinez, 6 hostile targets engaged, 5 confirmed hits, 2 civilian targets hit. Fail. Patterson, 8 hostile targets engaged, 6 confirmed hits, 1 civilian target hit. Fail. Driscoll turned to Sarah. Chen. He paused. Let the moment stretch out. 11 hostile targets engaged. Another pause. 11 confirmed hits. 0 civilian casualties. Time 28.4 seconds. Silence. When we pulled the targets, Driscoll continued, every single shot was either T-box or high center mass. That means every shot was a guaranteed kill. No wounded, no suffering, just clinical perfect execution. He held up one of the target silhouettes. The bullet hole was dead center of where the hostile's forehead would be. This is a 600-meter headshot on a moving target in a stress scenario with a carbine platform that most shooters can't even hit center mass with at this distance. Driscoll looked at Sarah like he was seeing her for the first time. Who taught you to shoot like this? For the first time since she'd arrived at Fort Liberty, Sarah allowed herself something close to a smile. My grandfather, Sergeant. Your grandfather got a name, General William Chen, sir. The name hit the range like a physical force. Every operator within earshot went still. They all knew that name. Iron Will Chen. Korean War. The legendary sniper who'd racked up 143. Confirmed kills as a company commander during the Chosin Reservoir campaign. The man who'd earned the Medal of Honor for holding a position against 2 companies of Chinese infantry with nothing but a sniper rifle and absolute refusal to retreat. The officer who'd set the Special Forces marksmanship record won 287 meters that had stood for 41 years. Grizzly appeared from the observation tower. His face was unreadable. He walked up to Sarah close enough that she could see the gray flecks in his stubble. "You're William Chen's granddaughter." "Yes, Master Sergeant." "Why didn't you mention that before?" "You didn't ask, Master Sergeant." For a long moment, Grizzly just stared at her. Then he turned to the assembled operators. "Everybody out. Range is closed for the day." They filed out, glancing back at Sarah as they went. The dynamic had shifted. Not all the way, not yet, but something had changed in how they looked at her. When the last operator was gone, Grizzly turned back to Sarah. "Listen to me very carefully, Lieutenant. I don't care whose granddaughter you are. I don't care if your family tree is nothing but Medal of Honor recipients and 4-star generals. In here, you're just another candidate. You're going to be tested. You're going to be pushed. And you're going to earn every single thing you get, just like everybody else. Are we clear? Crystal Master Sergeant." "Good." He started to walk away, then stopped. "That shooting, though. That was something. Your grandfather teach you anything else?" "Everything else, Master Sergeant." Grizzly almost smiled. "Almost. Then I guess we'll find out if everything else is good enough." That night, Sarah found her grandfather waiting outside the barracks. General William Chen, 74 years old. Retired for 8 years, but still standing like a man who'd never learned how to quit. Steel gray eyes, the same eyes Sarah saw in the mirror every morning, taking in everything and giving away nothing. He was wearing civilian clothes, jeans and a flannel shirt, but the Medal of Honor hung around his neck on its light blue ribbon, impossible to miss. "You beat my range record today," he said quietly. "Not the one that matters." "Not yet." They stood in silence for a moment. "Grandpa, you said you'd stay away until after selection. You said my being here had to be about me, not about you." "I lied." Sarah's eyes narrowed. "Why?" "Because something's changed." William Chen's voice dropped to barely a whisper. "Something I've been working on for 12 years. "What kind of something?" "The kind that's going to test everything I've ever taught you. The kind that's going to ask you to make a shot I couldn't make at a distance. I never reached against a target that—" He stopped. "Against a target that what?" William Chen looked at his granddaughter. And for the first time in Sarah's memory, she saw something in his eyes that she'd never seen before. Fear. "Against the man who killed your father." Sarah's blood went cold. "You found him?" "I found him. Rashid al-Maktoum. He's holed up in a compound in Syria. We have a 72-hour window before he moves again." "And you want me to—" "I want you to finish your father's mission. I want you to make the shot he couldn't make. I want you to put a bullet through the skull of the man who murdered my son." William Chen reached out and gripped Sarah's shoulders. "But first you have to survive selection. And I need to be absolutely certain that when the moment comes, when everything is on the line, you won't miss." And Sarah felt her heart pounding against her ribs. "I won't miss, Grandpa." "I know you won't." He released her shoulders. "That's why I'm here. That's why I've been watching. And that's why tomorrow when Grizzly tries to break you one more time, you're going to show him exactly what a Chen is capable of." He started to walk away, then turned back. "Your father's rifle is waiting for you. The one I built for him. The one he never got to fire. The Remington. Custom everything. I've kept it ready for 12 years, waiting for someone worthy of carrying it." William Chen's eyes locked onto Sarah's. "You're that someone, Sarah. You've always been that someone. You just didn't know it yet." He disappeared into the darkness. And Sarah stood alone, staring at the stars, feeling the weight of 12 years of grief and rage settling onto her shoulders like a second skin. Tomorrow they would try to break her again. Tomorrow she would show them that breaking wasn't an option. Because somewhere in Syria, in a compound, she'd never seen a man named Rashid al-Maktoum was breathing air that belonged to her father. And Sarah Chen was going to stop that breathing. One shot at a time. The night navigation exercise came 2 days later. 20 miles of movement through hostile terrain. Full combat load. Nothing but a compass, a map, and the stars overhead. Teams of 4, no GPS, no night vision devices, just basic land navigation and the ability to not get lost when everything looked the same in the dark. Sarah was assigned to Team 3. Her team leader, Master Sergeant Victor Kowalski. Her teammates, Staff Sergeant Derek Thompson and Corporal Jake Hutchins, 24 years old, the youngest operator in the selection course. They assembled at the starting point at 2200 hours. Full darkness. No moon. The North Carolina woods were a wall of black, interrupted only by the distant glow of the compound lights behind them. Grizzly checked each team's gear, making sure everyone had the required equipment. When he got to Sarah, he spent extra time inspecting her rucksack, her compass, her water supply. "You got any questions about the route, Lieutenant?" "No, Master Sergeant." "Any concerns?" "No, Master Sergeant." "Outstanding." He lowered his voice so only she could hear. "Your grandfather used to run this course when he was in selection. Finished it in 4 hours and 12 minutes. Faster than anyone before or since." He paused. "Just thought you'd want to know." Then, louder for everyone, "First team to Checkpoint Alpha wins bragging rights and a 4-hour sleep window tomorrow. Last team gets to clean the latrines for a week. Move out." Team 3 started into the woods. Grizzly on point, reading the terrain with practiced ease. Sarah followed in second position with Thompson behind her and Hutchins pulling rear security. For the first 5 miles, they made good time. Grizzly set a brutal pace, pushing through creek beds and over ridge lines with the confidence of someone who'd walked these woods 1,000 times before. Every 20 minutes, he'd stop, check his compass, adjust their heading, push on. At mile 8, they took a break in a small clearing. "Water break," Grizzly announced. 5 minutes, then we push to Checkpoint Alpha." Sarah dropped her ruck and pulled out her canteen. The night air was cool, almost cold, and sweat was starting to freeze on her skin. She could feel blisters forming on her heels where her boots rubbed. "Hey, Chen," Thompson's voice came from behind her. "How you holding up? This must be harder than getting your nails done, huh?" She didn't answer, just drank her water. "I'm talking to you, Princess. Or are you too tired to talk?" Sarah recapped her canteen. "I'm fine, Thompson. Thanks for asking." "Real sweet of you to join us on this little camping trip. Must be nice having a famous grandpa to get you special treatment." "Shut it, Thompson," Grizzly's voice cut through the darkness. "Save your energy for the movement." "Just making conversation, Sergeant." "Make it silently." 5 minutes later, they were moving again. The terrain got rougher, steeper hills, thicker vegetation. Sarah's legs were burning. Her shoulders ached from the rucksack. But she'd been in pain before. Pain was just information. At mile 10, something changed. They'd stopped in another clearing, this one at the base of a particularly steep ridgeline. Grizzly was checking the map when he turned to Sarah. "Chen, I need you to do a quick perimeter check. Make sure we don't have any wildlife issues before we start this climb." "Roger, Sergeant." She moved off into the tree line, scanning the darkness for any signs of animal activity. They'd been briefed about bears in this area. Wild pigs, Better to check now than stumble onto something territorial in the dark. She circled the perimeter, covering about 50 meters in each direction, saw nothing but trees and shadows. When she came back to the clearing, it was empty. Her team was gone. Sarah stood perfectly still, listening. No sounds of movement. No voices. No radio chatter. She pulled out her compass, oriented herself to the last known heading. Then she understood. They'd left her on purpose. She keyed her radio. Team 3, this is Chen. Request position. Static. Team 3, how copy? More static. Then Thompson's voice, barely containing his amusement. Oops. Thought you were right behind us, Princess. Must have missed you in the dark. Hey, you know the way back to base, right? Just follow the stars or something. Good luck. Click. Radio went dead. Sarah stood in the darkness. Alone. 10 miles from anywhere. Nothing but her compass, and her map, and her grandfather's training. She could quit. Key her emergency beacon. Get extracted. Go home with the very reasonable excuse that her team had deliberately abandoned her in hostile terrain at night. Or she could do what her grandfather would do. She pulled out her map, found her last known position, plotted the route to Checkpoint Alpha. The direct route, the one her team would take, was 12 miles. But there was another route. Longer distance, but easier terrain. If she pushed hard, maintained pace, navigated correctly. She checked her watch. 23:45. Checkpoint Alpha was scheduled for 0300 hours. That gave her 3 hours and 15 minutes to cover approximately 14 miles. Her grandfather's voice. When they try to break you, you have 2 choices. Break, or show them what breaking really looks like. Sarah shouldered her rucksack and started moving. The night navigation training her grandfather had given her since she was 12 years old kicked in like muscle memory. Navigate by the stars. There's Polaris, use it to find true north. Adjust for magnetic declination. Follow the terrain features. Creek beds run downhill. Ridge lines run perpendicular to valleys. Trust your compass more than your instincts, because your instincts lie when you're tired. She settled into a rhythm. Fast walk on flat terrain, slower on hills. Use your arms for balance. Breathe through your nose to avoid cotton mouth. Check your heading every 5 minutes. At 130, she crossed a creek bed she recognized from the map. 2 miles from Checkpoint Alpha. Right on schedule. At 221:15, she crested the final ridgeline. Below her, in a small valley, she could see the infrared chemical lights marking Checkpoint Alpha. And gathered around it, sitting on their rucksacks, drinking water, laughing about something, was Team 3. Sarah could have walked right up to them, announced her presence, proved she'd made it. Instead, she did something her grandfather had taught her when she was 15. She found a position with good cover and concealment approximately 200 meters from the checkpoint. Clear line of sight to the entire team. Then she pulled out her personal camera, a small digital model she kept for documenting training, and started taking photographs. For the next 40 minutes, she documented every single thing Team 3 did wrong. At 02:17, Grizzly silhouetted himself on the ridgeline, making himself a perfect target for any enemy observation post. Click. At 02:23, Thompson used his white flashlight instead of his red lens, destroying his night vision and broadcasting his position to anyone within 2 kilometers. Click. At 02:31, Hutchins set his rifle down, pointed toward his own team. A fatal safety violation. Click. At 02:44, the entire team gathered in a tight group around the map, making themselves a perfect target for a single mortar round. Click. 14 photographs total. 14 tactical mistakes that would have gotten them killed in actual combat. At 0258, Sarah stood up, shouldered her ruck, walked into the checkpoint. The look on Grizzly's face was worth the entire 14-mile movement. "Chen, how the hell? Checkpoint Alpha as ordered, Master Sergeant." She dropped her ruck and pulled out her canteen. "I took an alternate route. Hope that's okay." Thompson stood up, his face flushed. "You were supposed to..." "Supposed to what, Thompson?" Sarah's voice was calm, almost pleasant. "Get lost. Quit call for extraction." She drank her water without breaking eye contact. "Sorry to disappoint." Grizzly recovered first. "What's your time, Lieutenant?" 0258, Master Sergeant. Approximately 40 minutes before team arrival. That wasn't quite accurate. They'd arrived first, but they'd made enough noise approaching that she'd heard them coming from half a click away and adjusted her timeline accordingly. 40 minutes ahead. Sir Grizzly's voice was flat, unreadable. "On an alternate route, by yourself, in the dark." "Yes, Master Sergeant." "That's..." He paused. "That's actually pretty impressive, Chen." "Thank you, Master Sergeant." They finished the movement together, arriving at Checkpoint Bravo at 0500, just as the sun started painting the eastern sky pink and gold. Team 3 finished third overall. Would have been first if they hadn't spent 45 minutes at Checkpoint Alpha waiting and joking. The course ended back at the compound, where all the teams assembled for debrief. Commanders from CAG were there, including some faces Sarah recognized from her research. Major Daniel Crawford, the selection course commander. Lieutenant Colonel Marcus Webb, the Delta Squadron commander. And standing in the back, wearing civilian clothes and a baseball cap pulled low, someone Sarah's heart recognized before her brain did. Her grandfather. General William Chen. 74 years old, retired for 8 years, but still moving like a man 20 years younger. Steel gray eyes taking in everything and giving away nothing. He nodded to her. Just barely. A micro movement that said, "I see you. I know what you did. And I'm proud." Then Major Crawford called the formation to attention. "Outstanding work, everyone. 96% completion rate on a course designed to break you. That speaks to the quality of candidates we have this cycle." He pulled up a tablet, scrolling through results. Top team time goes to Team 7, completing the full 20 miles in 4 hours and 43 minutes. Well done. Polite applause. However, Crawford's voice sharpened. "I want to call attention to one particular performance. Lieutenant Chen, front and center." Sarah's stomach dropped. This was it. They'd found out about the photographs. She was about to get destroyed in front of everyone. She marched forward. Came to attention. Crawford looked at her for a long moment. "Lieutenant, you were deliberately abandoned by your team at mile 10. Is that correct?" "The team continued movement while I was on perimeter security, sir." "Yes." Crawford's eyes were hard. "And you completed the course solo, arriving at checkpoints Alpha and Bravo ahead of your assigned team." "Yes, sir." "That's a 14-mile solo navigation in darkness, with full combat load in under 3 hours and 20 minutes. He paused. "That's actually, let me check something." He scrolled through his tablet, then looked up at the assembled formation. The course record for solo completion was set in 1983, 4 hours and 12 minutes. By then, Captain William Chen. Every head in the formation turned to look at the back of the room where Iron Will stood watching. "Lieutenant Chen just beat that record by 52 minutes. Silence. Then Crawford continued. "But that's not why you're up here, Lieutenant. You're up here because you also submitted these to my office this morning." He pulled up the first photograph on a large display screen. Grizzly, silhouetted on the ridgeline. You documented 14 tactical errors committed by your team during the exercise. You cataloged each one, time-stamped them, provided tactical analysis of why each error would result in mission failure or friendly casualties in a combat environment. Another photo. Thompson with the white light. This isn't just land navigation, Lieutenant. This is battlefield analysis. This is the kind of tactical thinking we look for in operators. Crawford turned to Grizzly. Master Sergeant Kowalski, would you like to explain to the formation why your team committed 14 errors serious enough to get you killed? Grizzly's jaw worked. His face had gone red. But when he spoke, his voice was steady. No excuse, sir. That's correct. No excuse. Crawford looked back at Sarah. Lieutenant Chen, did your team's abandonment make you angry? No, sir. Frustrated? No, sir. Then why didn't you call for extraction? For the first time, Sarah allowed herself to look directly at her grandfather in the back of the room. Because quitting wasn't an option, sir. It never is. Crawford almost smiled. Dismissed, Lieutenant. Sarah returned to formation. The other operators were looking at her differently now. Not with acceptance, not yet, but with something close to it. Respect. After the formation was dismissed, Grizzly found her at the barracks. That was a hell of a thing you did out there, Chen. Just finished the course, Master Sergeant? No, you finished it faster than anyone in Delta history, including your grandfather. He stepped closer. And then you made me and my team look like amateurs in front of the entire command structure. Sarah said nothing. I owe you an apology. Grizzly's voice was rough. I've been testing you since you got here, making things harder than they needed to be, trying to break you. He paused. I was wrong. You were doing your job, Master Sergeant. My job is to find the best operators, not to break good ones because I've got outdated ideas about who can do this work. He extended his hand. You've earned your place here, Lieutenant. I'm sorry I made you prove it the hard way. Sarah shook his hand. The hard way is the only way that means anything, Master Sergeant. After Grizzly left, Sarah found her grandfather waiting outside the barracks. They didn't hug. Chen family didn't do public displays, but William's hand on her shoulder said everything that needed saying. You beat my record, Sarah. I had a good teacher. You had a stubborn teacher who pushed you too hard for too long. His eyes were bright. Your father would be proud. I know I am. Grandpa, Sarah's voice dropped. What you said the other night? About Syria, about Al Maktoum. Is it real? William Chen's expression shifted. The pride faded, replaced by something harder, colder. It's real. Tell me everything. William glanced around, making sure they were alone. Not here. Tonight. Range 19, 2200 hours. Why the range? Because I have something to show you. His jaw tightened. Something your father should have seen 12 years ago. He started to walk away, then turned back. That record you broke today? That was just the beginning, Sarah. What's coming next is going to be harder than anything you've ever faced. Harder than the hazing, harder than the training, harder than anything you can imagine. I'm ready, Grandpa. I know you are. His voice cracked, just barely. That's why I'm terrified. He disappeared into the growing darkness, and Sarah stood alone, feeling the weight of her grandfather's fear settling onto her shoulders like a physical burden. In 12 years of knowing him, she'd never seen him afraid of anything. Not combat, not death, not the memories of Korea that still woke him up screaming in the middle of the night. But tonight, when he'd looked at her, she'd seen something in his eyes that she'd never seen before. And that scared her more than anything Thompson or Grizzly or any of the 47 operators could ever do. Because if General William Chen, Iron Will himself, was afraid of what was coming, then maybe she should be afraid too. Range 19 was empty when Sarah arrived at 2200 hours. The long-distance precision range stretched into darkness targets invisible at distances most shooters couldn't imagine. She'd been here before, during daylight training, but never at night. Never alone. Then she saw him. Her grandfather stood at the firing line, silhouetted against the distant glow of the compound lights. He was holding something, a rifle case, long and narrow and clearly heavy. Sarah approached slowly. "You came," William said without turning around. "You knew I would." "Yes." He finally turned to face her. "I knew." He set the rifle case on the shooting bench and opened it. Inside, resting on custom foam, was the most beautiful rifle Sarah had ever seen. A Remington 700, heavily modified. The stock was custom walnut, worn smooth from decades of handling. The scope was a Schmidt and Bender, the kind of optic that cost more than most cars. And engraved on the receiver in letters so small you had to squint to read them were 2 words. For David. Sarah's breath caught in her throat. "This was supposed to be your father's," William said quietly. "I built it for him after he made Delta. Custom everything. Took me 3 years to get all the parts exactly right." He ran his fingers along the stock. "I was going to give it to him on his 35th birthday. He died 6 weeks before that birthday." Sarah reached out and touched the walnut. It was warm, as if it had been waiting for her. "Tell me what happened," she said. "Tell me everything." William was silent for a long moment. Then he sat down on the shooting bench and gestured for Sarah to join him. "Your father was the best sniper I ever trained. Better than me, though he'd never admit it. He had the eye, the patience, the mathematical mind that separates good shooters from great ones. I know all this, Grandpa. You know the legend. You don't know the truth." William's voice hardened. "In 2012, your father was assigned to a classified operation in Helmand Province, Afghanistan. The target was a man named Rashid al-Maktoum, Taliban commander, later ISIS, responsible for dozens of American deaths. He'd killed 3 CIA operatives, 2 journalists and a Navy corpsman who was just trying to help wounded children." Sarah felt her hands clench into fists. "Your father had him. 923 meters. Clear shot. Wind was tricky, 12 miles per hour, gusting to 15 quartering from the northeast. His spotter, a sergeant named Mitchell, gave him a wind call." William's jaw tightened. Mitchell was wrong. Off by 2 miles per hour. At that distance with that wind angle, 2 miles per hour is the difference between a kill shot and a miss. "Dad missed. By 4 inches. 4 inches, Sarah. The bullet passed so close to al-Maktoum's head that it clipped his ear. Drew blood. But it didn't kill him." William's voice cracked. 30 seconds later, al-Maktoum picked up an RPG and fired it at your father's position. Direct hit. Your father, Mitchell, and 2 other operators died instantly. Sarah felt tears burning behind her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. "I got the call at 0300 hours, William continued. 3 stars on my shoulder, Medal of Honor on my chest, and I couldn't do a damn thing to bring my son home alive." He looked at Sarah with eyes that held 12 years of grief. "I've been hunting al-Maktoum ever since. Not officially, can't be official. He moves between Syria and Iraq so often that any sanctioned operation would trigger international incidents. But I've had assets tracking him, learning his patterns, waiting. Waiting for what? For this." William pulled out a tablet and showed Sarah a satellite image. A compound in the middle of nowhere. 2-story stone building surrounded by a low wall. 3 days ago, our intelligence confirmed al-Maktoum is holed up in this compound in the Syrian desert. Small force, maybe a dozen fighters. He's meeting with what's left of ISIS leadership, planning something big. How big? Coordinated attacks on 3 American forward operating bases, Hundreds of soldiers. If he succeeds, it'll be the worst single-day loss of American lives since 9/11. Sarah stared at the satellite image. So send in a strike team. Take him out. We are. William zoomed in on a ridge approximately 1,500 meters from the compound. JSOC is putting together a direct action mission. 8 operators. Surgical strike. Get in, eliminate the HVT, get out. No air support, no QRF, completely deniable if anything goes wrong. And you want me on the team. I want you to be the mission. Sarah's head snapped up. What? The compound is in a location where the only viable overwatch position is here. William pointed to the ridge. 1,523 meters from the target building. That's beyond the effective range of standard sniper platforms. Beyond what most shooters can reliably hit even on a perfect day at a flat range. He met her eyes. I need someone who can make a shot at 1,500 meters in combat conditions with zero margin for error. I need someone who won't miss when it counts, and there's only one person I trust to make that shot. Sarah felt her heart hammering against her ribs. You want me to kill Al Maktoum? I want you to finish what your father started. I want you to make the shot he couldn't make. I want you to put a bullet through the skull of the man who murdered my son and your father. 1,523 meters. Sarah's voice was barely a whisper. Grandpa, that's almost a mile. I know exactly how far it is. The current world record for a confirmed combat kill is 1,473 meters. You're asking me to break that record. In combat. On my first real mission. Yes. And if I miss... William's face went pale. If you miss, Al Maktoum escapes. The attacks happen. Hundreds of Americans die. And everything your father sacrificed, everything I've worked for over 12 years means nothing. Silence stretched between them. Then Sarah reached into the rifle case and lifted the Remington 700. It was perfectly balanced. Heavier than she expected, but the weight felt right. Like it belonged in her hands. How much time do we have? 72 hours. You finish selection tomorrow. Then we fly to Syria. And the team? Grizzly volunteered to be your senior NCO. Captain Reeves is leading the assault element. Thompson and Hutchins are on the breach team. Sarah almost laughed. Thompson, the guy who's been trying to destroy me since day one. He requested the assignment, said he wanted to see if you were as good as everyone says you are. And if I'm not, then we all die together. Sarah looked down at the rifle in her hands, her father's rifle. The rifle he never got to fire. The rifle that had been waiting 12 years for this moment. I'll make the shot, Grandpa. I know you will. But I need you to promise me something. What? Sarah looked up at her grandfather with eyes that were no longer uncertain, no longer afraid. Promise me that when this is over, when Al Maktoum is dead and the mission is complete, you'll tell me the rest of the truth. William's expression flickered, just for a second. But Sarah caught it. The rest of the truth. You've been manipulating my career. You said so yourself. Every school I attended, every training course, every posting, you had a hand in it. I was preparing you. For what? This one mission, one shot at one target. Sarah stepped closer to her grandfather. I'm not stupid, Grandpa. You didn't spend 12 years preparing me for a single bullet. There's something else going on. Something you're not telling me. For a long moment, William said nothing. Then he sighed. Deep and heavy. The sound of a man carrying a weight he'd never intended to share. You're right, he said quietly. There's more, much more. Tell me. Not now. After the mission. After Al Maktoum is dead. I'll tell you everything. Promise! William reached out and gripped Sarah's shoulders. His hands were trembling, something she'd never seen before. I promise, but right now, I need you focused on one thing and one thing only. That shot. 1,523 meters. One bullet. One kill. He released her shoulders and picked up the Remington 700. Now, let's see if you can hit a target at that distance. For the next 4 hours, Sarah fired round after round at targets set up at increasing distances. 1,200 meters, 1,300, 1,400. Her grandfather stood beside her, calling wind adjustments, correcting her breathing, pushing her harder than he'd ever pushed her before. At 200 hours, he moved the final target into position, 1,523 meters, almost a mile. Sarah got into position behind the rifle, settled the stock against her shoulder, found her natural point of aim. Wind is 8 miles per hour from the southwest, William said. Temperature is 62 degrees. Humidity is 43%. Elevation adjustment is approximately 11.8 mils. Wind hold is 2.3 mils left. Sarah made the calculations in her head, adjusted the scope. The body gives up long before the mind does, William said quietly. Pain is just information. You're not injured, you're just uncomfortable. Learn the difference. I know, Grandpa. Then show me. Sarah breathed in, held it, let half the breath out, found the pause between heartbeats, pressed the trigger. The rifle roared. The recoil drove into her shoulder. The scope picture bounced, then settled. 2.6 seconds of silence, the longest 2.6 seconds of Sarah's life. Then, through the spotting scope, William spoke. Hit. Center mass. Maybe 2 inches left of perfect. Sarah worked the bolt, chambered another round. Again, William said. She fired. Hit. 1 inch high. Again. Hit. Dead center. Again. For 2 more hours, Sarah put rounds downrange at distances that shouldn't be possible. Her shoulder ached. Her eyes burned. Her fingers were numb from the cold. But she didn't miss. Not once. At 0400 hours, William called a halt. 60 rounds, he said. 60 hits at 1,500 meters. Sarah sat up, her entire body screaming with exhaustion. Is that good enough? That's better than I've ever seen. Better than your father. Better than me. William's voice was thick with emotion. That's the best shooting I've witnessed in 53 years of military service. He knelt down beside her. You're ready, Sarah. You're more ready than anyone has ever been for a shot like this. Then why do you look so scared? William was quiet for a long moment. Because combat isn't a shooting range. Because there are variables we can't predict. Because your father was ready too, and he still died. He put his hand on her shoulder. I can't lose you too, Sarah. I can't bury another Chen. If something goes wrong on that mission, if you have to choose between the shot and coming home alive... I'll come home, Grandpa. Promise me. Sarah looked at her grandfather. 74 years old. Medal of Honor around his neck. The last surviving member of his generation of warriors. A man who'd seen more death than anyone should have to see, and who still woke up every morning carrying the weight of everyone he couldn't save. I promise, she said. But even as the words left her mouth, she knew they both understood the truth. Some promises couldn't be kept, and some shots had to be taken no matter the cost. The next morning, Sarah Chen completed Delta selection. Not because they lowered the standards, not because of her grandfather's name, but because she'd outperformed 60% of the male candidates and matched the rest in every metric that mattered. The ceremony was small. No press, no cameras. Just the 27 candidates who'd made it through standing in formation while Lieutenant Colonel Webb read their names and handed them the subdued insignia that marked them as operators in the most elite unit in the American military. When he called her name, the applause was genuine. Even Thompson clapped. Even Grizzly, standing at attention in the back row, allowed himself the smallest nod of approval. But Sarah barely heard any of it, because standing next to Colonel Webb, wearing his old dress uniform with the Medal of Honor ribbon prominent above his left pocket, was her grandfather. And the look on his face told her that the real work was just beginning. After the ceremony, William pulled her aside. "Wheels up in 6 hours. Get your gear. Say your goodbyes." "Goodbyes to who? Everyone I care about is either dead or coming with me." William almost smiled. "That's the Chen spirit." He handed her a small box. Inside was a single brass cartridge, a .300 Winchester Magnum round, custom loaded. "What's this? The bullet that's going to kill Rashid al-Maktoum." William's eyes were hard. "I loaded it myself. Same powder charge, same primer, same specifications as every round you fired last night. Consistent, reliable, deadly." Sarah held the cartridge up to the light. It gleamed like gold. "One shot," she said. "One kill." "For Dad." William's voice broke. "For David. For Mitchell. For everyone that bastard has ever hurt. And for closure, Sarah. 12 years of grief. 12 years of rage. It all ends with this bullet." Sarah slipped the cartridge into her pocket. "Then let's go end it." The C-17 touched down at a classified airstrip in Jordan at 0300 local time. Sarah hadn't slept during the 12-hour flight. Neither had anyone else. 8 operators sat in silence, each lost in their own pre-mission rituals. Grizzly cleaned his weapon for the 4th time. Thompson sharpened his knife on a whetstone. Hutchins wrote a letter to someone girlfriend Mother Sarah didn't know. Captain Marcus Reeves went over the mission brief one more time, even though they'd all memorized it hours ago. Sarah held her father's rifle across her lap and thought about the shot. 1,523 meters. 1 bullet. 1 kill. For 12 years, Rashid al-Maktoum had been breathing air that belonged to her father. Tonight, that breathing would stop. The final briefing took place in a tent that smelled like diesel and sand. Reeves stood at the front with a laptop projecting satellite imagery onto a portable screen. "Final intel update," he said. "Al-Maktoum arrived at the compound 6 hours ago. He's meeting with 4 ISIS commanders. Security is 12 fighters, all experienced, all heavily armed." He zoomed in on the compound. "Assault element will approach from the northwest. 8 clicks of foot movement through open desert. We move at night, hit them at 0400 local right before sunrise." He pointed to the ridge. "Chen, you'll establish overwatch position here. 1523 meters from the compound. You'll provide real-time intelligence on enemy movements and engage targets of opportunity during the breach." Sarah nodded. "Comms check every 15 minutes once you're in position. Call sign is Viper. You see anything hinky, you call it." "Understood." Reeves looked at her for a long moment. "Chen, I need to ask you something. And I need an honest answer. Ask. Can you make this shot, not in training, not on a range, in combat with lives on the line with a target who killed your father looking back at you through your scope? Can you pull that trigger without hesitation?" Sarah met his eyes. "Captain, I've been preparing for this shot my entire life. I just didn't know it until 3 days ago." Reeves held her gaze for another second. Then he nodded. "Good enough for me. Gear up. We move in 30. The insertion was textbook. High-altitude jump from 28,000 feet. Free fall through frozen air that burned Sarah's lungs. Chute deployment at 5,000 feet. Silent descent through darkness so complete that she couldn't see her own hands in front of her face. The team landed 3 kilometers from the objective rally point. Consolidated in silence. Began movement. Sarah separated from the main element at the 2-kilometer mark. Her route took her east toward the ridge that would become her home for the next 90 minutes. She moved alone through the Syrian desert carrying her father's rifle and 60 pounds of additional gear. The night vision goggles turned the world into shades of green and black. Every shadow was a potential threat. Every sound was a potential enemy. But she'd been trained for this, by the best sniper who ever lived, for exactly this moment. The ridge was exactly where the imagery showed it. Good high ground, clear line of sight, perfect position. Sarah established her hide with practiced efficiency, cleared the rocks, set up her shooting mat, positioned the rifle on its bipod, arranged her ammunition within easy reach. 10 rounds. Though she'd only need 1. The custom cartridge her grandfather had given her the bullet meant for Al Maktoum was chambered and ready. Then she began the waiting. Through her scope, the compound looked peaceful. A few lights in windows. 2 guards on the roof smoking cigarettes and talking. No indication they expected company. Sarah keyed her radio. "Viper in position, eyes on target, 2 sentries on rooftop. No other movement visible." Reeves's voice came back distorted by encryption. "Copy Viper. Assault element is 2 clicks out. Maintain observation." "Roger." She pulled out her range card and began final calculations. Wind at ground level 6 miles per hour from the southwest. But wind at mid-trajectory where the bullet would spend most of its flight time was harder to read. She used her spotting scope to observe dust patterns. Heat mirage, the way the distant sand moved. 8 miles per hour, maybe 10. Variable, temperature 91 degrees, humidity low, barometric pressure stable. She ran the numbers 3 times, checking her math. Elevation 11.6 mils, wind hold 1.9 mils left. Coriolis effect at this distance 0.5 mils right. Net wind hold 1.4 mils left. The math was solid. The rifle was zeroed. The ammunition was consistent. All she needed now was the target. At 03:15 movement at the compound. A vehicle arrived. Dust cloud visible in the green glow of night vision. 3 men got out. One of them walked with a pronounced limp, favoring his left leg. Sarah's heart rate spiked. She'd seen that limp in intelligence footage. Rashid Al Maktoum, injured by an IED in 2014. Hip shattered, never fully recovered. He walked like a man whose body had been broken and poorly rebuilt. "All elements, this is Viper." Sarah kept her voice steady, despite the adrenaline screaming through her system. "HVT confirmed on site. I say again, high-value target is confirmed on site, moving toward main building." Reeves's voice. "Copy Viper. Maintain observation. Do not engage until breach." "Roger." Al Maktoum disappeared into the building, and Sarah waited. The next 45 minutes were torture. Watching. Waiting. Occasionally seeing shadows move behind windows, never getting a clear picture of who was inside or what they were doing. At 03:55, 5 minutes before the scheduled breach, Al Maktoum appeared on the rooftop. Sarah's finger moved to the trigger. Then she saw what he was carrying. An RPG. Rocket-propelled grenade. The same weapon he'd used to kill her father 12 years ago. And he was scanning the desert, looking for something, looking for them. "All elements, this is Viper." Sarah's voice was urgent now. "HVT is on rooftop, armed with RPG. He's scanning the approach route. I think we're compromised." Reeves. "Say again, Viper." "He knows we're coming. He's got an RPG aimed at your approach vector. If you continue on current heading, he'll have a clear shot." Silence on the radio. Then Reeves, How the hell does he know? Unknown. But he's definitely looking for us. He's got that RPG shouldered and ready. More silence. Then Grizzly's voice. Captain, we're 500 meters out. If we abort now, we can't abort. This is our only window. Thompson. Then we push faster. Hit them before they're ready. Negative. If he fires that RPG into our formation. Sarah watched through her scope as Al Maktoum adjusted his position. Getting a better angle, preparing to fire. Her grandfather's voice in her head. When everything goes wrong, you have two choices. Panic and die. Or think and survive. Captain, I have a solution. Reeves. Talk to me, Viper. I can take the shot now, before you breach. Take him off the board before he can fire. Negative. We need confirmation of all targets inside before, sir, with respect, if I don't take this shot in the next 30 seconds, he's going to fire that RPG into your formation and kill everyone. Silence. 5 seconds. 10. Al Maktoum's finger moved to the RPG's trigger. 20 seconds. Chen. Reeves's voice was steady. Take the shot. Sarah settled behind the rifle. 1,523 meters. Wind shifting now 12 miles per hour, quartering from the right. Temperature 91 degrees and climbing as the sun approached the horizon. Target partially obscured by rooftop wall. Only head and shoulders visible. No time to recalculate. No time to second guess. Her grandfather's voice. The rifle doesn't miss Sarah. You do. So don't. She found her breathing rhythm. In, hold, out, pause. On the pause between heartbeats, she settled the crosshairs on a point approximately half a meal left of Al Maktoum's head, compensating for wind drift, accounting for bullet drop, trusting 12 years of training and 60 rounds of practice fire, and every single moment her grandfather had ever spent teaching her what it meant to be a Chen. She pressed the trigger. The Remington roared. The recoil drove into her shoulder. The scope picture bounced with the shot, then settled. 2.6 seconds of absolute silence, the longest 2.6 seconds of Sarah's life. Through the scope, she watched the bullet fly, watched it arc through the dark Syrian air, watched it cross the distance between her and the man who had murdered her father. And then Al Maktoum's head snapped back. The RPG fell from his hands. His body crumpled, collapsed onto the rooftop like a puppet with its strings cut. Target down. Sarah's voice was calm, steady, professional. Al Maktoum is KIA. Headshot confirmed. The radio erupted. Grizzly. Holy, did she just... Thompson, at 1,500 meters, that's not possible. Reeves. All elements assault, 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 breach now. But Sarah wasn't listening, because there were more targets. A gunner in the courtyard had grabbed an RPK machine gun and was running toward a defensive position. Sarah worked the bolt, chambered a new round, found the target. 1,498 meters. High center mass. Fire. The gunner dropped. Another fighter emerged from the building carrying a second RPG. He was looking for the sniper. Looking for her. His eyes scanning the ridgeline. Sarah put a round through his chest at 1,512 meters. A third target appeared on the eastern wall. Fourth at the main gate. Fifth in the courtyard. She worked the rifle like a machine, breathing, aiming, firing, working the bolt, breathing again. 9 rounds fired. 8 confirmed kills. The only miss was when her target dove behind cover 2.3 seconds after she pulled the trigger. The assault element hit the compound like a thunderbolt. Breaching charges, flash bangs, the controlled violence of professional operators doing what they'd trained their entire lives to do. Sarah watched through her scope as Grizzly cleared the main building, as Thompson and Hutchins secured the perimeter, as Reeves confirmed the bodies of 4 ISIS commanders who would never plan another attack. And in the center of it all, on the rooftop where he'd died, lay Rashid al-Maktoum, the man who had killed her father, the man who had haunted her grandfather's nightmares for 12 years, the man who would never hurt anyone ever again. "Compound secure," Reeves' voice was breathing hard. "All hostiles neutralized. 0 friendly casualties." Grizzly came on the radio. "Chen, that shooting was... I don't have words. 8 kills at over 1,500 meters in combat conditions. That's not just good. That's legendary." Thompson's voice quieter than Sarah had ever heard it. "You saved our lives. That RPG was aimed directly at our position. If you'd missed..." "I didn't miss." "No." Thompson paused. "No, you didn't." "Reeves, Viper, confirm, kill on primary target." Sarah looked through her scope one more time at the body on the rooftop. The man who had taken everything from her family. The man her father had died trying to kill. "Primary target confirmed, KIA. Headshot at 1,523 meters. Silence on the radio. Then Grizzly's voice filled with something that sounded like awe. 15 to 23. That's a new world record, by 50 meters. "I know." Sarah's voice cracked just barely. "My grandfather will be proud." The exfiltration went smoothly. Helicopters appeared out of the darkness like angels. Sarah was the last one on board carrying her father's rifle. As the helicopter climbed into the Syrian sky, she looked back at the compound growing smaller below. Somewhere in that building was the body of the man who had haunted her family for 12 years. And now he was gone. Not because of revenge, not because of hatred, because someone had made the shot that needed to be made. Sarah reached into her pocket and pulled out the spent brass from her first shot. The bullet that had killed al-Maktoum. She held it up to the light coming through the helicopter's window. Such a small thing. Brass and lead and powder, worth maybe 50 cents. But it had ended a war that had lasted 12 years. Grizzly sat down beside her. "How do you feel?" Sarah thought about the question. Really thought about it. "Empty," she finally said. "I thought I'd feel something. Satisfaction. Closure. Relief. But I just feel empty." Grizzly nodded. "That's normal. The adrenaline crash. The emotional come-down. It'll hit you later, probably when you're trying to sleep. That's when the faces come. The faces. The people you killed. They visit you at night. Remind you that they were human once, even if they didn't act like it." He put a hand on her shoulder. "But here's the thing, Chen. Those faces, they would have killed hundreds of Americans if you hadn't stopped them. The nightmares you're going to have are the price you pay for the nightmares you prevented for everyone else." Sarah looked down at the spent brass in her hand. "My father paid that price." "Yeah, he did. And now you've finished what he started." Grizzly squeezed her shoulder. "He'd be proud, Chen. Damn proud." Sarah closed her eyes. And for the first time since she'd learned the truth about her father's death, she let herself cry. Not loud, not dramatic, just silent tears running down her cheeks as the helicopter carried her away from the place where she'd finally become the warrior her grandfather had always known she could be. The flight back took 6 hours. 6 hours of silence punctuated only by the helicopter's rotor noise and the occasional status check on the team. When they landed at Fort Liberty, the sun was setting. Golden light painted the tarmac in shades of orange and red. A reception committee was waiting. Colonel Webb, Major Crawford, a handful of senior officers Sarah didn't recognize, and standing slightly apart from the others, wearing his dress uniform with the Medal of Honor displayed prominently, was her grandfather, General William Chen. His eyes found Sarah's the moment she stepped off the helicopter, and in those eyes she saw something she'd never seen before. Not pride, not satisfaction. Peace. 12 years of hunting. 12 years of grief. 12 years of planning and preparing and waiting. It was finally over. Sarah walked toward him, still carrying her father's rifle. When she reached him, she didn't salute, didn't come to attention, didn't do any of the things protocol demanded. She just handed him the spent brass. "It's done, Grandpa." William Chen looked at the small piece of brass in his palm, the bullet that had killed his son's murderer, fired by his granddaughter at a distance that shouldn't have been possible. "Your father would be proud," he said quietly. "I know. I'm proud too. I know that too." William Chen did something then that he hadn't done in public since Sarah was a child. He pulled her into his arms and held her. And in that embrace, surrounded by operators and officers, and the fading light of a North Carolina sunset, Sarah Chen finally understood what her grandfather had been preparing her for all along. Not just this mission, not just this shot, but everything that came after. 3 days later, Sarah stood on Range 19 at Fort Liberty, facing the longest shot of her life. Not because of the distance, she'd already made that shot in combat, but because this time everyone was watching. Major Declan Brennan stood beside the shooting position holding a tablet with ballistic data from the Syria mission. 44 years old, former Army sniper instructor, the man responsible for verifying every long-distance kill claim in Special Operations history. "Lieutenant Chen, for the record, can you confirm the conditions of your shot in Syria?" 1523 meters. Wind variable 10 to 12 miles per hour from southwest. Temperature 91 degrees. Target partially obscured. Time pressure approximately 3 seconds to shoot or mission failure. Brennan typed notes into his tablet. "And today's conditions?" Sarah checked her weather meter. 1550 meters. Wind steady at 14 miles per hour from the west. Temperature 96 degrees. No time pressure. Static target. "Harder conditions than Syria," Brennan observed. "Yes, sir." "Command wants 3 shots. Prove you can group at this distance. Prove Syria wasn't a fluke." Sarah looked downrange. The target was barely visible, a speck of tan against the brown Carolina dirt. "Any questions, Lieutenant?" "No, sir." "Then whenever you're ready." Sarah got into position behind her father's Remington 700. The walnut stock was warm from the morning sun. She began her pre-shot routine, the ritual her grandfather had drilled into her since she was 8 years old. Check the scope. Verify 0. Confirm ammunition. Build the range card. 1550 meters with a 300 Winchester Magnum meant the bullet would drop approximately 48 feet from bore line to impact. She'd need 12 mils of elevation to compensate. Wind at 14 miles per hour full value from the west meant roughly 2.2 mils of holdoff to the left. Temperature at 96 degrees meant the air was less dense. The bullet would fly slightly faster, hit slightly higher. Adjust down 0.2 mils. She ran the calculations 3 times, each time the same answer. Behind her, the observation area had filled up. Word had spread through Fort Liberty like wildfire. The female Delta operator who'd made an impossible shot. The granddaughter of Iron Will Chen, who'd beaten his 41-year-old record. Everyone wanted to see if it was real. Sarah tuned them out, found her breathing rhythm. First shot. In, hold, out, pause. The trigger broke clean. The rifle recoiled. The scope picture bounced and settled. 2.7 seconds of flight time. Hit, Brennan called out. Center mass, approximately 3 inches high. Murmurs from the crowd. One shot proved nothing. Could still be luck. Sarah worked the bolt. Chambered a second round. The wind had shifted. She could see it in the mirage in the way the heat waves bent and twisted. Now 15 miles per hour from slightly northwest instead of due west. Recalculate. 2.4 mils left. Second shot. Breathing. Aiming. Pause between heartbeats. Trigger. 2.7 seconds. Hit, Brennan announced. 2 inches right of center. The crowd was quieter now. 2 perfect shots at nearly a mile. That wasn't luck. That was skill. Sarah chambered the third round. This was the shot that mattered. Not because it would prove anything to the ballistics team. They already had their proof. But because of who was watching. She could see him in her peripheral vision. Her grandfather. Standing at the back of the observation area. 74 years old. Still standing like a man who'd never learned how to quit. The same man who'd held her when she was 6 and couldn't stop crying about her father being deployed. The same man who'd taught her that tears were fine, but quitting wasn't. The same man who'd built this rifle for a son, who never came home. Third shot. This one was for him? She found the stillness that exists between moments. The place where time slows and the world narrows to nothing but the crosshairs and the target, and the absolute certainty that the bullet will go exactly where you send it. Trigger. The rifle spoke. 2.7 seconds of perfect flight. Hit, Brennan called. Touching the second shot. 3-round group 4.1 inches at 1550 meters. The range erupted. Not applause, not cheering. Something between awe and disbelief. 4.1 inches at nearly a mile. That was beyond exceptional. That was something that shouldn't be possible with any platform, let alone a bolt-action rifle in field conditions. Brennan walked downrange with a measuring tape. When he returned, he was shaking his head. Confirmed. 3-round group 4.1 inches center to center at 1550 meters. He looked at Sarah. In 22 years of analyzing sniper data, I've never seen anything like this. Most operators would be thrilled with a 12-inch group at this distance. You just shot a group smaller than my hand. He turned to the assembled personnel. For those keeping score, the previous Delta Force marksmanship record was held by then-Captain William Chen. 1287 meters set in 1983. That record stood for 41 years. Brennan paused. As of today, the Delta Force record is 1550 meters, and the longest confirmed combat kill in United States military history is 1523 meters. Both records now belong to Lieutenant Sarah Chen. Silence. Then someone started clapping. Then another. Then the entire range was applauding, and Sarah felt something she hadn't expected. Embarrassment. She'd never wanted the attention. Never wanted to be the first female this or the record-breaking that. She just wanted to be good enough. Good enough to honor her father's memory. Good enough to justify the faith her grandfather had placed in her. Good enough to make the shot when it mattered. Major Crawford stepped forward, raising a hand for silence. Lieutenant Chen, you're needed at JSOC headquarters immediately. There are some people who'd like to speak with you. 30 minutes later, Sarah stood outside a briefing room she'd never been inside before. The kind of room where generals made decisions that sent people to places that didn't officially exist. To do things that never officially happened. The door opened. A young captain gestured her inside. They're waiting for you, ma'am. Sarah stepped through the door and stopped. The briefing room was massive, capacity for 400 people. And it was packed, every seat filled. Operators she recognized from Delta, officers from JSOC, faces she'd seen in classified briefings but never met in person. And at the front of the room, standing at attention, were 3 generals. Lieutenant General Thomas Hayes, JSOC commander, 59 years old, Silver Star recipient, the man who'd planned more direct action missions than anyone in the modern military. Major General Patricia Nguyen, first female 2-star in Special Operations Command, 55 years old, Bronze Star with valor, a legend who'd fought tooth and nail for every rank she'd earned. And General William Chen, retired, 74 years old, Medal of Honor around his neck, the light blue ribbon standing out against his dress uniform like a piece of sky fallen to earth. Sarah came to attention. "Lieutenant Chen reporting as ordered, sir." General Hayes stepped forward. "Lieutenant Chen, attention to orders." The room went silent. 400 people holding their breath. Then all 3 generals saluted her. Not the casual salute of daily military courtesy. The full formal salute reserved for ceremonies and moments that mattered. 3 generals, 9 stars combined, saluting a lieutenant. Sarah's mind went blank. This wasn't protocol. This was impossible. Junior saluted senior, not the other way around. Hayes held the salute for 3 full seconds before dropping his hand. "At ease, Lieutenant." Sarah forced herself to relax. "What you don't know," Hayes continued, "what we haven't told you, is that the mission you completed in Syria was 12 years in the making." The screen behind him lit up with a photograph Sarah had seen before. Her father in full combat gear standing with his Delta team somewhere in Afghanistan. In 2012, Colonel David Chen was killed during a classified operation in Helmand Province. The target was Rashid al-Maktoum. Colonel Chen had the shot. His spotter gave him incorrect wind data. The shot missed. 30 seconds later, al-Maktoum fired an RPG that killed Colonel Chen and 3 other operators. Hayes pulled up another image. An RPG impact. Smoke and fire. The mission was classified as a failure. Al-Maktoum escaped and eventually became one of ISIS's most effective commanders, responsible for dozens of American deaths over the next decade. The screen changed again. A younger William Chen in combat fatigues. General Chen spent the next 12 years tracking al-Maktoum. Not officially, not through normal channels, but he tracked him. And when he found him, he began planning an operation that required something very specific. Hayes looked directly at Sarah. He needed a sniper who could make a shot at a distance beyond anything Delta had ever attempted in combat. A shot that would exceed his own record. A shot that required not just skill, but absolute precision under impossible pressure. William Chen stepped forward. "Sarah." His voice was rough. "When your father died, I made 2 promises. First, I would find the man who killed him and ensure justice was served. Second, I would make sure no parent ever lost a child because of a missed shot again." He paused. "I've been coordinating with JSOC since 2012. Every step of your career, every school you attended, every training course you completed, I had a hand in it. Not to give you special treatment, to make you better, to push you harder, to ensure that when the moment came, you would not miss." Sarah felt like she'd been punched in the stomach. "You manipulated my entire career." "I prepared you," William corrected. "I made them test you harder than any candidate in Delta history. The hazing, the equipment failures, the night navigation exercise where your team abandoned you. I authorized all of it. I needed to know you could handle the pressure. The sabotage, the dead rat, Thompson cutting my strap. That was all you—" "Not directly, but I told Grizzly to test you to the breaking point, whatever that took." Sarah's hands were shaking. Anger and confusion and something else she couldn't name. Why not just tell me, because if I told you, you would have been shooting for me, for your father's memory, for revenge. William's voice softened. I needed you to shoot for the right reasons, for the mission, for the team, for the job that needed to be done. That's the only way the shot works. That's the only way you come home alive. General Hayes spoke again. Lieutenant Chen, the shot you made in Syria didn't just eliminate a high-value target. It prevented an attack that would have killed hundreds of American soldiers. Your shot saved lives we'll never be able to count. He nodded to Major General Nguyen. She stepped forward holding a small wooden box. Lieutenant Sarah Chen, by order of the President of the United States, and with the recommendation of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, you are hereby promoted to the rank of Captain, effective immediately. She opened the box. Inside were captain's bars, polished silver, gleaming in the fluorescent light. The room erupted in applause. But Sarah barely heard it, because her grandfather was doing something she'd never seen him do in public. He was removing his Medal of Honor, the light blue ribbon, the gold star, the citation for valor beyond measure, the highest military decoration the nation could bestow. He'd worn it for 41 years with quiet pride, and now he was taking it off. Grandpa, what are you? Quiet. He placed it in her hands. This was awarded to me in 1983 for actions during Korea. I eliminated 143 enemy combatants over a 6-month period. My longest confirmed kill was 1287 meters. I wore this medal with pride because I believed I'd done something exceptional. His eyes were bright with unshed tears. Today, you surpassed me, not just in distance, in courage, in skill, in everything that makes a warrior. I can't take this, Grandpa. This is yours. You earned it. And now I'm giving it to you. Not because you're my granddaughter, not because you're a woman proving something, but because you achieved perfection when it mattered most. He looked at her with an expression she'd never seen before. Your father should be here to see this. He's not. So I'm doing what he would have done. I'm telling you that you've become everything we hoped you'd be, and more than we ever dreamed was possible. Then General William Chen, retired 4-star Medal of Honor, recipient Legend of Delta Force, did something that violated every regulation in the Army handbook. He knelt, on one knee, in his dress uniform, in front of 400 witnesses. This is not military protocol, he said clearly. I don't care. This is a grandfather kneeling before the finest soldier he's ever known. Not because of blood, not because of family, but because when 8 American operators needed someone to make an impossible shot, you made it. General Hayes looked at General Nguyen. Some silent communication passed between them. Then they knelt too. 3 generals, 9 stars collectively, kneeling before a newly promoted captain. The room went completely silent. This was unprecedented. This was impossible. This was the kind of moment that would be talked about for decades. From the back of the room movement. Master Sergeant Victor Kowalski stood up, walked down the center aisle, stopped in front of Sarah. Ma'am, I hazed you. I mocked you. I sabotaged your equipment and tried to break you every single day of selection. His voice was rough. You saved my life in Syria. That RPG was aimed at my position. Your shot dropped Al Maktoum before he could fire. I owe you everything. He lowered himself to one knee. I was wrong about you. I was wrong about women in Delta. I was wrong about what makes an operator. You didn't just prove me wrong. You showed me what excellence looks like. Then Staff Sergeant Derek Thompson stood, walked forward, knelt. "You beat me in every test that mattered, ma'am, and you did it with half the people actively trying to make you fail. That's not just good, that's extraordinary." Sergeant First Class Michael Driscoll, the sniper instructor who'd tried to embarrass her on the range, knelt. "I've trained snipers for 15 years. I've never seen anyone shoot like you, and I never will again." Corporal Jake Hutchins, still limping from his shrapnel wound, knelt. "You covered our extraction with the most incredible shooting I've ever witnessed. 8 shots, 8 kills. While we were running for our lives, you were calm as a surgeon. Thank you, ma'am." But Captain Marcus Reeves, team leader, the man who'd led the Syria mission, knelt. "I've led direct action missions on 3 continents. I've worked with the best operators in the world. You're better, and it's an honor to serve with you." Then the entire room moved. 400 Delta operators, Rangers, Special Forces soldiers, support personnel. They stood. They walked forward. And one by one they knelt. Not because they were ordered to, not because of protocol or ceremony, but because they'd witnessed something that demanded recognition, a soldier who'd faced every obstacle they could create, and overcome them all, who'd been underestimated, sabotaged, doubted, and dismissed, who'd responded not with anger or complaints, but with performance that exceeded anything they'd ever seen. The room was filled with kneeling warriors, all facing one woman who stood in the center holding her grandfather's Medal of Honor, trying not to cry. William Chen, still kneeling, spoke loud enough for everyone to hear. "They're not kneeling because you're a Chen. They're not kneeling because you're a woman breaking barriers. They're kneeling because you demonstrated something we all claim to value, but rarely achieve: absolute excellence under impossible circumstances." He stood up. The others remained kneeling. When the shot needed to be made, when lives hung in the balance, when failure meant death, and success meant something beyond victory, you made the shot. That's all that matters in this line of work. Not your name, not your gender, not your politics or your background, or who your grandfather is. He put his hands on her shoulders. "Can you make the shot when it counts? My granddaughter can. And now the whole world knows it." 3 weeks later, Captain Sarah Chen stood at Section 60 of Arlington National Cemetery, the area where they buried the war dead from Iraq and Afghanistan, where hundreds of white marble headstones marked the resting places of soldiers who'd given everything. She found her father's grave easily. She'd been here before many times. Colonel David Chen, 1977-2012, beloved father, son, and warrior. She placed 3 items on the headstone: her grandfather's Medal of Honor, the light blue ribbon bright against the white marble, a spent .300 Winchester Magnum casing, the brass from the shot that killed Rashid al-Maktoum, and her new captain's bars. "Mission complete, Dad." Her voice was barely a whisper. "Al-Maktoum is gone. The shot you couldn't make, I made for you. You can rest now." The October wind moved through the cemetery, rustling the leaves of the oak trees. "They made me a captain, gave me my own team. Grandpa says you'd be proud. I hope he's right. I hope you're watching. I hope you know that everything I did, every shot I made, every time I didn't quit, it was for you." She stood there for a long time, one hand on the cold marble. Behind her, at a respectful distance, William Chen watched. When Sarah finally turned away from the grave, he was waiting. They walked together through the cemetery, past thousands of markers, each one representing a story of sacrifice and service. "What happens now, Grandpa? Now you lead, you train, you prepare. Because there will be another mission, another impossible shot, another moment when everything depends on you making the call that no one else can make. And you think I'm ready for that?" William stopped walking, looked at his granddaughter with eyes that had seen 4 decades of combat. "Ready, Sarah? You've been ready since you were 6 years old, and I first put a rifle in your hands. You just needed to discover it for yourself." He put his arm around her shoulders. 3 generations of Chens have served this country. 3 different wars. 3 different kinds of hell. But one constant. When the moment came when everything was on the line, we made the shot. He looked at her. "You're not just continuing that legacy, Sarah. You're elevating it. And that's the greatest thing a grandfather could ever ask for." They reached the cemetery gates. Beyond them, the world waited. Missions to plan. Teams to build. Shots to make that hadn't been imagined yet. Captain Sarah Chen, Delta Force team leader, holder of the longest confirmed combat kill in American military history, took one last look back at her father's grave. Then she walked forward into whatever came next. Behind her, her grandfather saluted one final time. Not to his son's grave, but to his granddaughter's future. The sun set over Arlington in shades of orange and gold, the same colors that had painted the Syrian desert when she'd made the shot that changed everything. Somewhere in that sky, Colonel David Chen was finally at peace, and on the ground below, his daughter carried his legacy forward. One shot at a time, one mission at a time, one generation at a time. That's what warriors do. That's what Chens do. And Sarah Chen was the best of them all.